Greetings, Healthy Beginnings Learning and Practice cohort. This is Chanel Tage representing the AmChip Healthy Beginnings team. As you should be aware, the May cohort call is actually asynchronous, and we highly encourage each team to really take this time and dive fully into the action planning process. And so, to help kind of guide you all in that process, we wanted to provide some resources before you actually start the action planning process. And so, you'll be able to find in your own folders this power of wellness tool. And what we've done is adapted this same document for each team's use as they're going through the action planning process and ensuring that the community-based organizations are the true leaders in the decision-making process. We know that there might be power imbalances between this new and sometimes existing relationships that we have in this cohort. And so we wanted to provide a document that kind of goes about exploring power imbalances and different types of relationships between new and existing partnerships. So we highly encourage you all to take a look at this document. It's relatively short. It goes about, again, discussing power imbalances and also how to navigate them. And it also provides some descriptions on how it developed the power awareness tool. Again, we've adapted it for our own use, so this isn't exactly the same, but it provides a lot of great context. So without further ado, I will take you through what you can fill out with your team. Again, this is not a required activity. We just thought that this might be useful for each of the state and community-based organizations to go about completing to ensure that there's a consensus on who is making the decisions and making sure that as a team, you all are comfortable with that. Again, as a reminder, in this action planning process, we do expect that the community-based organizations with their expertise from the community perspective is really guiding this process. And so kind of as a check and balance, we wanted to provide this tool to ensure kind of a written document to check whether or not that is actually happening. So again, this partner power awareness tool was adapted really to ensure that the community-based organizations perspective and leadership is respected in this process. And this tool will help kind of indicate any variations in perspective. And so this first page is the instructions, how to use. You'll find all the information that you need to be able to complete it if you choose to. This is not, again, a required document to complete. We just, again, feel like this might assist the community-based organizations in kind of seeing what the Title V team members might feel in specific key decision-making topics. And so what you'll first do is on the left side, and as a group, you guys can decide what your decision-making topics will be. And so, for example, you can include the decision about what the first team's action planning step is, or who's going to decide those action planning steps. And then another example could include decision on who's actually responsible for executing those steps. And so each member, whether you are a community-based organization or representing Title V, each person will represent one partner. You don't have to indicate your name, but if you choose to, you are more than welcome to do that. You'll indicate who you're representing, so Title V in this case, and you will then score based on your perspective. So as someone representing Title V, if I score a 4 for partner decides, I'm saying that the community-based organization has the power in deciding the first action step. And the same thing for the second key decision-making topic. Who has a decision or who has the power in deciding who's responsible for what? If I'm Title V and I scored 4, that means that my perspective as a Title V member indicates that the community-based organizations are the ones who are making that decision process, who are making those decisions. Whereas if you're representing the community-based organization, you might feel that deciding the first action step is actually a co-decision, and so you select 3 instead of 4. And so variation between the community-based organization and Title V is completely fine. Again, AMCHIP will not be reviewing these scores. We don't intend to use this information, but we do want, again, for you all to use it if necessary to kind of track what each member's perspective is on who is supposed to decide various purposes of the action planning process. And so again, you'll notice that there is an indication score, levels of participation. And so 4 is indicating that the partner is truly the one who decides in this process, all the way to 0, where the partner is not involved in the decision-making process. And whatever you choose, whether you're Title V or community-based organization, if you choose to do this activity, we only ask that you are completely transparent and honest. Again, you do not need to include your name here, but perhaps it'll be helpful for your future conversations as you're kind of reviewing the scores and, noticing any variation that you didn't expect. And so one thing that we'll also want to note is that because this is the beginning of the action planning process, you will start at the scope and build. And so I'll just quickly go through. And on this tab, you'll notice that there is room for partners, 10 partners, whether you're a community-based organization or Title V member. You do not everyone on the team needs to answer these or respond to these questions, but we are offering that space. And so what you'll notice on each tab is more partners available. If you want to include more, feel free to add a different column and make sure that you are including a sum here, so that you can review these scores. And so now I'll take just a brief moment to go over interpreting the scores. So as mentioned before, the scale or level of participation ranges from 0 to 4, and the 4 is indicating that the partner holds the power in this decision-making process, whereas 0 would indicate that the partner is not involved in the decision-making process. Now, we hope that this is a joint effort led by the community-based organizations, but again, please feel free to be honest in your perspective. And so as we're kind of reviewing and interpreting the scores, each of the scores, so each column, each person's responses will be summed. And the higher the score indicates that they feel that the partner has great power in making those decisions and should be the ones making those decisions. So to provide a little bit of nuance, since there is different perspectives being shared on this tool, we did want to highlight some differences. And so you're not concerned if you see a low score versus a high score, because it might differ based on whether you are Title V member or community-based organization. And so essentially, if you notice that the Title V members are scoring relatively high, this would suggest that they feel that the community-based organizations in their partnership has the decision-making power, versus a low score would suggest that Title V feels like they should be holding power in that decision-making process. While we don't necessarily expect that, it is important to indicate honestly how you feel, and so that there can be an honest discourse as you're going through the action planning process. And the same thing for the community-based organizations, just kind of in reverse. If a high score would suggest that perhaps the community-based organization member feels that Title V should be the one making the decision in this specific topic, or in contrast, a low score would suggest that Title V really doesn't need to be involved in that decision-making process. Again, that's not something that we expect. We don't necessarily expect zeros, but also AmChip will not necessarily be reviewing these scores. So again, honesty is highly encouraged. This is for your team to engage in honest discourse on who really has the power in this decision-making process throughout your action planning process. So another thing that we want to note is that, again, we'll be starting on the scope and build because we're just now beginning the action planning process. But as you are going through and kind of reviewing some of the activities that you all are planning in the action planning process, you can continue to utilize this document and kind of move forward using the same steps. So rather than continue on with scope and build, perhaps you're revisiting and revising some of the activities that you all have set out in your action planning goals and activity steps. So you might move forward, and if you find that there's an activity in your action planning process that is, really doing well, or something that you want to continue, you might move on to manage and maintain or sustaining these outcomes. And so as we move along the action planning process, we highly encourage each team, if you choose to partake in this activity, to kind of continue to go through this to make sure that everyone is on the same page and understanding who has or who should have the decision-making power as you all are completing this action planning journey. So hopefully that was clear. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to anyone on the Healthy Beginnings AmChip team. We're here to assist. I want to again emphasize that this is not a required activity, but it is here for your team's resources to kind of make sure that you're keeping each other accountable, and that you are engaging in honest discourse throughout this process. So thank you so much for your time. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free and do not hesitate to reach out to us. Have a great rest of your day.